Today, welcome everybody. Today is a very, very interesting shir, very interesting learning that we're going to be doing. We are studying Shar HaYichud. Actually have the newer version of the Sefer, Ner Mitzvah V'Tera'er, the candle of a mitzvah. A mitzvah is a candle, and the light is Torah. And we're specifically studying Shar HaYichud, which is the gate of oneness, to help us learn about how to fulfill the mitzvah of Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, the mitzvah of connecting everything to the oneness of Hashem on a deep level. We've been studying for a number of weeks, and we're in the second part of chapter Paragimel, which is chapter 3 of the Gate of Oneness. And why today is so special is because you're going to see the shortest summary on the whole process of Chabad Hasidus. Now, last week we explained that Hasidus is the study of the inner Torah, the soul of the Torah. But Hasidus also means, Chesed means to be kind, specifically to be kind to God. In other words, we look at God and understand what He wants from the world, and we try to fulfill what He wants, and that's how we're being kind to God. So obviously we're also kind to the creations, but our goal is not just to fulfill what He wants from us like a commander, but even more than that, we take on the commander's intent as a chassid. And we are learning Chabad Hasidus, where Chabad, we've been learning specifically over the last few weeks, the three parts of the brain, the right brain, the Chachma, the insight, the left brain, which is the Bina, which is the comprehension, and the back brain is Das, which is the focus brain, and also the forehead. Our forehead also corresponds to Das. We learned that when it comes to focus, we can either go higher, like you can go from the left brain to the inside of the right brain using focus, which is like the higher das, the higher focus, which is like right behind the forehead, and then there's the lower das, which helps us emote. In other words, if we couldn't bring our understanding to emotion, then we wouldn't do very much. We'd just understand everything, but we wouldn't get things done. So bringing understanding to emotion is a very important part of Chabad Hasidus. So Chabad Hasidus. Now, if you ask somebody, in Chabad Hasidus, what's the order? Oh, well, it's Chachma, it's insight, then comprehension, and then focus, or they say wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Well, that's not the way it's practiced, because we don't have an easy, direct access to the deeper aspects, the deeper abilities of our insight. We don't have a direct access to be able to access the ability to have these flashes of new ideas directly through just because we want to. The way we do it is through study. We start with the comprehension brain. We go from Bina, then we do Chachma, then when we focus on our understanding, we compare, we immerse ourselves. First of all, we do self-study, we immerse ourselves into the subject. Then we start comparing the various components, the various parts of the subject, which takes effort. And then we're using the deeper aspects of our comprehension brain, our left brain, when we're comparing things. And that helps us to get to the core concept. Then we focus on the core concept, and it helps us to get to a flash of insight. But then the flash of insight is pretty much useless unless we bring it to application, unless we apply this flash of insight into making a difference in this world. Otherwise, it remains something abstract. And we learned in the second chapter, we do not want to leave the flash of insight as something abstract, and we need tavuna. We need the ability of application to be able to actually use it. Now, then last week we started to study that there's actually that this process of discovery applies to any form of study. It applies to using your brain in any way at all. It follows this intuitive path. However, when it comes to Hasidus, we study the creation, and one of the subjects that we study is Mamala Kalamim, which is how God fills the entire world. Now, people are probably familiar with they've learned in school. They learned about physics. Well, physics and chemistry. Well, let's think about it. That there's different types of physics. There's a deeper physics, which is quantum physics, and one of the interesting subjects in physics, which is going to help us to understand a little bit more about Mamal Kalamim, is the idea of radio waves or light waves. And if we bring up a string, we study. You can look it up and you can learn it. When this is a string and we make a wave go through the string, and therefore if we make the wave go in a specific way, we can actually give information from one side of the string to the other side of the string. So in electromagnetic waves or radio waves, they actually flow through the sky. Now, if there's a lot of waves, so we can give a lot of information from point A to point B, and however, it can't go very far. But if the wave is very slow, then the information, there'll be a delay from when the information goes from point A to point B, but it's going to be able to go over a long distance. Like if you take a ham radio, you'll be able, the waves are so large that they'll be able to send them straight up. They'll bounce off the sky, the stratosphere, and they're going to go back down in another country. And this can be pretty much a hand-powered radio. They can do that because that's the type of wave. And there's a different type of wave which people speak about, which is still a little bit theoretical, but we call it they call it scalar waves. And scalar waves, it's not a wave at all. In other words, when you're dealing with a wave, here's a string. When you're dealing with a wave, so there's as a process of point A to point B. But scalar waves, it's not a wave at all. Imagine that the fabric of the universe also has like a broomstick. Imagine this will be totally hard. So if I move on one side of the broomstick to the other side of the broomstick, so the movement on one side, the other side is immediate. The other side feels it immediately. And apparently, it's been passed down to us, it's written in Hayom Yom, that thought functions like that. Thought is immediate to the other side of the world. Sometimes you think about somebody and they think about you, and we've all had this experience that you could think it's just coincidence, but what we've received down the generations, and it's written Hayom Yom, that this is something real, that we can think about somebody and they may think about us at the same time because they felt it, and they felt it. It wasn't a wave, it was immediate. It was absolutely immediate that the person felt that, because maybe there's a deeper layer of reality where the fabric of reality is something that's actually hard. It's not a wave, it's actually hard, and if you move one side, the other side feels straight away. So that's a deeper understanding of physics. And then there's even a deeper way, is that everything is really emanating from the source, re-emanating from the source at every moment. It's being just like we gave the metaphor of a flintstone can make a spark and has an unlimited potential of making one spark after another. So the world is really just like we're inside this source energy, whatever it is, like we're inside the stone, and we're just being emanated like the spark inside the stone that's there at being recreated from its source at every moment. However, that doesn't explain the idea of chemistry. There's an action and then there's a reaction. So part of creating the world is that even though it's being created from the source every second, but there's also another system where there's an action and there's a reaction and there's a wave and there's a delay from point A to point B, and that is and another way of looking at reality, at the way Mamala Kalamim, how we are really inside uh, God, and God is the fabric of everything. He is everything, and everything is Him. So when we study the different metaphors, they explain how He is everything and everything is Him, and how the physics actually works, and how the chemistry actually works. Using the metaphor and comparing the metaphor, we come to insight. We come to insight, a deeper understanding of how the fabric of the world actually works, and this helps us fulfill the mitzvah of the oneness, because now we have some like a rational explanation which we can understand how everything is connected to the oneness. Now let's read inside. So let's read inside the Kamisha Kosov. Let's maybe Rabbi Smith, are we able to put up the text? Yeah. Okay. The Kamisha. So we're going to now experience the shortest explanation of the complete system of Chabad, of the Chabad system, how it works. The Kamisha Kosov Lamaila. And as we wrote in previous chapters, B'chol Prate, in all the details, all the parts, Prate in Hebrew is like the word parts, of Keseh Chochma Bina, the Bina. We said the crown of Bina is like the depth of Bina. That's the core concept, which is difficult to access. You have to actually go through a process to access the core concept. You have to go through the experience. Chochma, the ches represents chachma, which is insight, which is the ability to come up with something novel, or to come up with a novel understanding. And then bina shebabina is actually the process of comparing and contrasting the various parts of the text and asking what's the same, what's the different, why, how is this what we just read now, how is this different than what was written a few lines earlier. So this whole process, hakol Yimtza Bahasaga Pratis Kazais. This whole experience of these three parts will be found in a part. Pratis means again parts, the specific comprehension, this specific topic. The Kahai Gavna B'chol Hasagas Elokus, and in any activity of comprehending divinity, Hapratim, in all its parts, we're going to have this process. So in other words, you will learn a piece, a discourse of Chassidus, and we've learned before that the person delivering the discourse is somebody that's actually in the realm of insight or even further, and they are delivering what they are experiencing and seeing to us, and then we take that information which they were able to get from vision, and we now compare and contrast the parts, and we with the intention to get to the core concept, and we would love to be able to have some flash of insight in it. So we do this process. That's what Chabad is all about. And then uvechinas hadas, and we also have to use our focus brain, which is the back brain, or maybe the brain right behind that corresponds to the forehead. Hu bechinas hakara. What is about that? It's about recognizing things. It's about attention, baragoshes, and it's about also feeling, getting a feel, the muskal, in the insight, in the concept, the way it is in the insight. Beiskashus, we get immersed in it, connected to it. People know what immersion is. It means that your attention is on it. So it's not enough just to understand something. To actually get to the experience and to get to the insight, we need our attention on it. It needs to be in our focus. Valzeh nemar, and that is why it says in the verse, "V'yadaita hayom." You should know today, and the Hebrew word that's being used over there is v'yadaita, means to focus. In other words, to know, but focus today and understand God. So it's not enough just to comprehend. You have to actually focus, and the mitzvah, the commandment, is not complete till you focus. And then it also says, it says in the verse, know the God of your fathers. No. So it's not enough just to comprehend. You need to actually put your attention on it, put your focus on it, so you get a feel for the subject, and that's how you're fulfilling this mitzvah. This mitzvah it's all part of the mitzvah of uniting everything with God's oneness. And it's all in the topic of comprehension of how God fills the world, how the physics of the world, it actually is God. And there's parts to this. There's parts to this because if we want to get deeper, we need to investigate the parts. Like it's known. Belashon Yiddish, der klep kanal be'erech. And in Lashon Yiddish, in Yiddish we say the klep. The klep means like clap. What do we do when we clap? We put our hands together and they get glued together. So the klep means we need to glue ourselves to it. We have to put our attention. Kanal be'erech, like we explained at length, how this is very integral part. That's the das of Chabad Hasidus. That's the in the acronym. That's the last letter, the acronym, the Chabad, the D represents das, which means the focus. Specifically, focus brings us to the higher depth, to the depth of Chachma, because inside, in the right brain itself, there is a depth in the right brain itself, and focus gets us up there. It's like the elevator. The depth of insight comes from the abstract, which is higher than intellect. It's a recognition of truth, which is higher than intellect, and the depth of insight comes from there, which is, and it's intangible. What is insight? Insight is the vision of the intellect, and we want to get to the depth of the vision of the intellect, because sometimes you can have a child that sees something because he doesn't understand what he's looking at, right? We want to have the depth. We really want to understand what we're looking at. In this comprehension, the bechinas memale kalamim of the subject matter. Bechina means like the level. We translate the word bechina as level, but bechina in Hebrew really means a test, and means the ability to differentiate, the ability to recognize something. So when we recognize this whole concept of how God fills the world, the physics of the world, vision is higher than comprehension of the intellect. If you can get to vision, if you get access to vision, then it's a whole new level. It's a whole new ball game. You can just get into vision and just look around, and things that become obvious. The commercial cost of B'Raim Nehemna, it's written in the Kabbalah Sefer, which is called Raim Nehemna, the faithful shepherd. It's connected with Moses, was the faithful shepherd, and in every generation there's a faithful shepherd that's a leader of the Jewish people. It says over there in this part of the Zohar, Ba'ain haseichel shebeliba is chazi kula. With the eye of intellect that is in the heart, everything could be seen. So actually what we have here is that the heart has an ability to see, which is beyond the eyes. I actually heard, and I think I mentioned this before, I heard a researcher explain that our eyes can only see a certain spectrum of light, but our heart has the hardware to be able to pick up spectrums of waves and light which our eye cannot see. So that I found that to be very interesting, that a researcher came to that conclusion, because we have the same thing in our tradition passed down from the Zohar, that the heart has an ability of seeing. It's also can be understood on a very simple level. Um, if somebody sees like a snake on the ground, right? If they don't know what it is, so the eyes, it doesn't really make a difference. But the heart understands what they're seeing. They're seeing something that may be potentially dangerous. So it's the heart that makes our physical vision of our eyes matter. V'nikra istakla biyukara. Okay, this whole concept of activating the ability to see with our heart has a name, and it's called istakla. Istakla is like um, to look on the honor, the malka of the king. It's an activity in Judaism. So what does it mean to look at the honor of the king? Well, it means going through the whole process, studying with comprehension, focusing, getting to insight, then activating the vision of our heart, and that is called something just opens up during prayer, and we're able to have a recognition on things which are usually not recognizable to the physical eyes. And this is called seeing the honor of the king, seeing reality for what it is, seeing reality, seeing the physics of the world for what it is. In other words, when you study physics, your goal is to come up with to understand the laws so you can create something useful. This is different. We're doing this for a mitzvah. So the type of information that's going to be given to us is specifically information that can be used to activate this ability in our heart, to be able to activate a certain vision in our heart in order to fulfill the mitzvah of unifying everything, of recognizing how everything is connected to the oneness, the actual fabric behind creation, how it's one, and understand that in its parts. Well, the point of understanding it with its parts is in order to activate the vision of the mind, which activates the vision of the heart. So even vision, there's levels in vision. So we want to get to the depth of the vision. Barichas, like we've explained earlier at length. But that's not enough. So what? So we have activated the vision of our heart, and we have a certain recognition in the fabric of creation, the fabric of physics, and the fabric of what we call quantum physics. But it needs to be applied. So the next stage, so it's not part of the acronym of Chabad, but it's integral to Chabad, is application. So, and the level of Tvuna, which comes right after the activation of the vision of the heart, which means to draw out, like drawing out from a well, like drawing out water from a well, through this depth that we've activated, which is hidden in the comprehension, the mamalakalamim of this subject, how God fills all the worlds. In other words, seeing the oneness of God in the fabric of creation. Canal. Lidei Gilui. We want to bring this application, means bringing this depth and making it revealed. Because when you kolet means it becomes part of you. Really well. Letzam hasaga, you understood the core comprehension. Hazais, this core comprehension. Al kain, therefore, yuchal avia, then you're able. In other words, it's you've gone over it so much. Your actual physical neurons have changed, so you have speed, and therefore you're able to bring it, becoming Yanim Nivdalim, you're able to immediately, rapidly connect it with other separate things, mimena, that's separate from the actual subject matter. For example, you're able to understand certain parts of the dimensions of reality. In other words, there are other worlds, but they're right here. They're just deeper dimensions. Right where we are now, there are deeper dimensions. And each world has like tenfold, at least tenfold more energy than the world we're in. It's like in a cup of water, you have what is made out of hydrogen and oxygen. And you've heard of the hydrogen bomb. Hydrogen bomb is like the most powerful atom bomb. If you and a hydrogen bomb can destroy a whole city. The hydrogen inside a cup of water there's enough energy over there in a deeper dimension. If it just needs to be unlocked, there's enough energy over there to power the electricity of the whole city. The problem is when you unlock that energy, it could be destructive unless you have a way, unless you have proper vessels to be able to handle that energy. But inside the hydrogen, if you split the atoms of the hydrogen, if you split those parts, there is just so much energy. And you don't experience it. It's there, but it's like in a deeper dimension. So there's like many dimensions of worlds. So what happens is when a person activates through this entire process, they've activated the vision of their heart. Now they're able to go to the next stage and recognize what's going on in these dimensions of these creations. Well, the goal is to recognize how they come from the abstract and they become concrete. Bebechinas memela in a way that the oneness of God fills everything, derech prat, and we are going to derech prat means we go into the parts, we go into details. We don't want to just know what the point is. We want to go to details. We're going to learn later because that makes a big impact on the person. When we learn the general concept of how God fills the entire world and fills all these dimensions, we don't necessarily, it's hidden in that how all these parts work. But when you're activated, your vision, you can understand things that are not written. Or you can recognize things that are not written. You can recognize this oneness and in areas which are not written in the text. And without the power of application, this power of application, in this comprehension, this subject which we comprehend, the mamalakalamim of how God fills the world, how fills the fabric of creation, harinisheres, without application, harinisheres then the whole comprehension remains in your brain of understanding, and you can write essays, but that's about all you could do with it. And the person will not know what to do with this. It's just subject matter, and they don't know how to make it, what to do with it. And how to bring this activity of reflection and this process of study, exactly into the quality of how reality comes about, how it is created. Hayesh Mayin, how the concrete comes from this Yesh Mayin Klal. He won't be able to understand and to recognize how the concrete comes from the abstract. So therefore, it's not reality. So what happens is we want the person to attach and recognize a deeper reality. See, we have eyes They can only see what what things the light bounces off the objects, and then it goes into the back of our eye, our retina, and the nerve that and those nerves recognize these the light, and then they send the information to the brain, and the brain recreates a picture of what's happening, and that's how we understand things. And what we're trying to do is, you tell the person, you have an ability to actually know what reality, because what you're seeing is just pixels. It's basically just internal pixels. That's not the way reality really is. um, and and we will this is a process of a person recognizing how reality actually works, how it's something that's concrete, that's coming from something really abstract energy. And and without tvuna, without this ability to apply the insight, then a person won't know how to make that real for himself, like it's understood from everything that we've learned till now, especially in chapter 2, how we spoke about in chapter 2 the importance of application. Vidal. And what we've spoken about till now is enough for a person that understands. It's enough for you just to take this information, learn it again, listen to it again, and you're going to understand what we're trying to say over here. Umizem muvan. And this is some really powerful words we're going to say right now. From all this is understood, Siba Samaniya, the reason why people are held back, the Chadashim, new people that start to study Chassidus, or Gam B'Yeshenim, or people that are veterans, or older people, people that are veterans in the study of Chassidus, B'Chasarei Tvuna. However, they are missing application. Gam Shemasigim Heitev, even though they have great comprehension, Hadek means they have really precise comprehension. B'Shash Shemim, when they hear from the Rebbe saying the Chassidus, they have really precise comprehension. They have great grasp, V'roim, and they actually see. In other words, they actually have some insights. They actually see. So they get to Chachma. They get to the inside of Chachma. However, they didn't get Tfuna, so they are not able to at all bring it into the reflection and davening. So in other words, it's like the Siddur, the prayer book, in which all of Judaism is encoded in codes. It can be translated simply and understood. However, it's also encoded deeper levels of Judaism. The entire Judaism is encoded in those words. So when they study the Chassidus, they don't know how to do reflection and actual words of davening. Binyan Hisavas Ha'elamus, when they're davening, they're not able to think about how the dimensions, the worlds, the dimensions of reality, the deeper worlds, they're not able to the information, the subject matter of the Chassidus, they're not able to see how that affects, how that helps them grasp what's going on with the creation of the deeper worlds. And it happens that these people study the Chassidus and they say, well, what are we going to do with all this content matter? For what benefit do we need this content matter? Because in his mind, either he's a rookie or he's a veteran, but because he's missing tfuna, both things are two separate things. There is the study of Chassidus, the study of the esoteric parts of the Torah, and they may be able to, they sound really good, but it's not connected with the Siddur. And then, and as an extension of that, we want to be able to see that in the world. I'm going to give you a little example. Like, for example, colors. Colors in this world are a hint on what's going on in the deeper dimension. For example, the red color is, we know red color is like blood. It's like gvura. It's like strictness. And then when you have a red apple, but then when you eat the apple, your experience is hopefully it's a sweet apple. So the presentation of the apple seems to be connected with the deeper dimension of gvura, of strictness, and yet the experience afterwards is sweetness, which is chesed, which is kindness. So then you realize from the hint in this world that this has something to do with the dimension of strictness inside kindness, or strictness with the intention of giving kindness. Now, if you're really hungry, you're going to appreciate it when you eat an apple, when you say the blessing on the apple. But then you can go a little further and say, well, what else has this similar signature? And then you can say, well, maybe those two things have a connection to each other. And then you can see things in the creation which are really beautiful, which nobody else necessarily sees. So it's a whole new experience of the world. So a person can be living in the same world, but they can have a much deeper experience of actually what's going on. But to be able to get to that step, first we need to do that in prayer. So what happens, the rookies or even the veterans, when they don't have tevuna, they're not able to connect their learning with the actual reality of the world. And for the first connection is to jump to the siddur. First, not able to connect it to the siddur, to the prayer book, the words in the prayer book. That's because the person only has understanding. He's great understanding. The meicha in his brain, but it's separate from everything else in the reality of the world. Chulas, etc. Lashon Yiddish. In Yiddish, mer nit as the muskel allein farzich. The person who has great comprehension only has the muskel. They only have the insight by itself with no application. And that's not really what Chabad is all about. We want Tvuna as well. We need that application. We need to be able to make that connection. We need to be able to connect with the siddur, the words with the siddur, and then being able to connect that experience of reality with the physical world. Vidal and Mavian, or what we've written so far, is enough for an understanding person. So now we've completed chapter 3. Do we have any questions?
None at this time.
Okay. So we're going to do something very interesting. The first 3 chapters are really how to think. And then how to think as a Chabad, specifically Chabad Chassid. The next 3 chapters are going to be about how to think in a way that makes impact on our emotions, how to prepare our emotions, that what we study is going to make impact. And then we're going to go do the chapters, the next 3 chapters after that, 7, 8, and 9, are going to be the actual subject matter. There's 3 subject matters in all of Hasidus. Pretty much, there's only 3 topics that we investigate, and those 3 topics are going to make all the impact that we need. And so that in each chapter, we're going to summarize one of those topics so we know what to do with the topic, because when you learn a discourse, you don't necessarily know what to do with it, because there's actually something you need to do in order to make that effective. But right now, we're going to learn about the things that we need to do with our mind in order to make emotional impact. So let's read inside Dalit, Me'ata, and now, and from now. Yesh levarer. We are going to explain beichus inyan haizbeinus in a quality. Eichus is quality reflection, quality deep study. Im der chlal or der prat. Should you go for the klal? Klal is like the whole. It's actually it's probably the same word. Klal is like the whole. Should we go for a holistic picture or derech prat? Derech is like the word part. It's like the word through in English. In German, it's Yiddish. It's durch. So it's the same root letters. Usually, words have root letters, and usually the root letters are 3. So it's derech, but in German it becomes durch, to go through. In you have a knife, which from Scotland, it's called a dirk, because it just slices right through. And in English, the word ends up being through. So do we want to go through a holistic chlal, a holistic way of studying Chassidus, or derech prat, or do we go through a part? Prat means part, a part understanding, dafka specifically. And he's going to give you a dugma. A dugma is a model. He's going to give you a model. So that means an example. Ba'asaga elokis, when we are having comprehension in the divine, the bechinas mamala kalamim, we're going to specifically attach our minds to the concept of how God or divinity is the world, it fills the world, it is the world, derech chlal, and we're going to go in a holistic way, chlal in a holistic way, bigimel olam esbiyah. We're going to look at the 3 worlds, which is 3 deeper dimensions, which are called biyah. Now, what are the 3 dimensions? Because there's the biyah basically refers to 3 dimensions, the dimensions of thought, speech, and action. In other words, when God thinks, speaks, and actualizes that, it creates our world, because we're like inside God, like inside a brain, and the brain is able to think, create meaning, and then the brain actually creates sound and emotion, adds sound and emotion and planning and measurement to those ideas, and then it actually completes that picture with pictures, which that would be like the action, completing the story. So first you have a concept, you plan it out, you create a structure, and then you actually implement and actually create a finished product. So these are the 3 levels of 3 dimensions: Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. Now that's why the first part of the creative process is called creation. That's why thought is corresponding to Bria. Bria means to create. Yetzira is to form, because you need to measure things out. So Yetzira is when you form everything. So that's like speech. And Asiya means action. And that's the world we live in. We live in the world, the physical world of action. However, we have access to the other levels, the deeper dimensions, at least in a certain way. We do have access to the deeper dimensions. Like, for example, where in this physical world is 1 + 1 = 2? We've mentioned this before. It's everywhere. So 1 + 1 = 2 is really in a deeper dimension in the world, physical world of action, of Asiya. It comes from Bria, but it's in our physical world. It's everywhere. So, and we're going to understand this holistically, these 3 worlds, so these 3 dimensions. Hakol sherish inyan echad, and we're going to say that everything has one root, because we're looking at everything holistically. Who B'chal mashalim, we're going to look at all the metaphor that Chassidus provides. What are the metaphor? The ziv of light. Light is a very common metaphor, and the way he spashtus, the way the light spreads, and it has certain characteristics when light spreads. So we're going to say that the creation is really light waves. Everything is waves. Even matter, solid matter, is just a wave. It's a wave of light. Or Isis, but another way of understanding reality is like a language, letters. And this is two paths of Kabbalah in Sfas, 500 years ago, when the Kabbalists started to publicize what was passed down to them. There was two paths. There was the way of the Arizal, and it was written down by his student Reb Chaim Vital in a sefer called Eitz Chaim, the Tree of Life, and it describes creation as a process of development of light. Or Isis, the other way, it was the Ramak was another Kabbalist, and he describes the process of creation as a language, as words. It's a code. It's a code. And if you understand the code, you understand creation. And chlaluse, if we look at it in a holistic way, what is language? Language is I have the ability to speak, and I'm just revealing something that was inside me. Or holistically, we're going to look at a different way. So I'm revealing something that was inside me. So that's how creation just comes about. It just it just comes about, just is revealed like that, like a language, or like light from a flashlight. Or a different holistic approach is erech hanivda legabe habal gvul mechudesh. Legabe bilti bal gvul derech klal. Another holistic way is what is the relationship between an unlimited power source and the created or whatever comes out of it, the created source. So in other words, let's say you have, let's give it another metaphor. Let's look at the nuclear fusion, and we're going to say that the nuclear atoms are the source of the energy, and the energy that comes out of the nuclear fusion is, you cannot compare it to the unlimited energy which is found in the atoms. Well, it's not. It is a limited energy, but on the different layers, in different dimensions, that energy is really unlimited. So we're going to start comparing each level of energy and how the energy gets greater and is more powerful the deeper you go, till you compare how the unlimited, infinite ability to give off energy, and how that compares with the limited, minute, tiny energy that we actually experience as a result. And we can look at that in a holistic way, and we can see that theme everywhere. And understanding this theme, there are many ways. Oifan is actually wheels. So there's many that you can split a pie in many ways. However, it's all holistic. Even though we're going to find many parts. So you're taking a pie and you're going to study and you're going to slice it, and there's going to be many parts, harba. But the attitude is holistic, as I'm going to explain. Or we can go through the parts. How are we going to access activate our heart and our ability to, our vision of our heart? We're going to go, our attitude is, let's go into the details, and let's go into the nitty gritty. Let's go into the specifics. Let's go into the parts. we are going to make reflection in each dimension. We're going to take a specific dimension. We're going to focus on that. We're going to take a specific creation and we're going to focus on that creation. We're going to say the coffee on the table that I'm drinking comes from as water, which comes where it comes from, and the coffee bean, how it grows in a certain. It needs to grow a certain climate with a certain humidity and a certain. It needs it makes a difference how far off the ground the coffee is, and it grows and it needs the sun and it needs a certain climate, moonlight, and how that energy, that electromagnetic energy, which makes the coffee bean that I have, that comes from the sun, and the sun, how that energy comes from the nuclear fusion, and the nuclear fusion comes from a deeper reality of the fabric of the universe. It's like a sea of this magnetic sea, and it has much more energy than the sun itself. And we just keep on going, and this comes from the angels, which are, and we go through the names of the angels. So we're being very, very specific in each creation. And we go into all the parts of the levels. Madregas means steps. We go through all the steps. The parts of the steps, chalukim, which are separate from each other, the sidrei ishtalshalos, in the order of the chain order of events. Me'ila la'ila, from one cause to another. In other words, it's like chemistry, cause and effect. We're going to go from cause and effect, cause and effect. We're going to jump steps at this point in time. We're going to go from cause and effect. In each one by itself. We take something specific. We go from cause and effect every single step in all its parts. Now, what we just did now, let's go back a little bit. The mitzvah of connecting everything to God's oneness, there's really two questions. The first question is, how did the objects in the world don't add to God's oneness? And really that's called the lower oneness. And we answer that there's a way to answer that question, how we trace everything back to the essential fabric of the creation, and how it really has a higher source, which is unlimited. So that is called the lower oneness. And then there is Yichudei Law, and that's what we've been describing. You can do Yichudei Tata in the lower oneness in a holistic way, or you can do it in a specific way in all its parts. And the same thing in the Yichudei Law, the higher oneness. The question is how I've never ever heard science even think of this. How does not the building blocks of the various emotions of creation not add to the oneness? In other words, kindness is a movement in one direction, and strictness is a movement in another direction. And so it turns out that these emotions means to move, they actually create the fabric of space eventually, but in our experience, they're emotions. So how do the emotions not add to the oneness? How they're really part of the oneness? And that's the higher unity, understanding that whole question. And there's an advantage in.
Can I ask a question? Are you saying how do they not add to the oneness, or how do they not detract from the oneness?
How they not? Both. How they not in addition, and how they not distract from the hundreds. That's two ways of looking at.
You're saying when you're adding to the oneness, what you mean to say is taking one and making it more than one because you have these additional things.
Well, we're saying that's not true, right? They don't add to the oneness.
Your question is, why don't they?
Yeah, why don't they? That's the question, Yichudei Law, and we want to answer that question. So we come to the recognition that it trace them back, and really it's all the essence of God. Not so we don't recognize them as separate entities for themselves. That's what we want to do. And okay, so we've mentioned before how there's three basic dimensions. we're going to three basic dimensions is the world of action, which we live in. There's a deeper is the world of planning, which is a much more powerful world, which is the world of Yetzirah, which is where things are formed. That's like corresponding to God's speech. And then there's a deeper dimension, which is God's thought, which is like the meaning. And then there is a world even deeper than that. It's God's personality. And that world is not even considered a creation. It's considered just an expression. That's called Atzilus. And Atzilus in Hebrew means like powerful. Atzile means like it's that world is like on a whole, it's like really, really powerful because this is God's personality. But over there are emotions. There are the 10 sefirot, the 10 building blocks of creation are there, but they're just an expression of himself. And Be'er V'Keli, there's two parts. There's the energy and the matter. And over there, there's no energy and matter, but Keli is like a vessel. Like you put water in a cup. And so you have what a vessel is basically limiting a certain expression in order to come to a certain outcome. Because if you have, let's say you want to be kind to somebody and you just like pour kindness on them, so the result is not going to be kindness if you just keep on pouring water on them. So in order to be able to have an effective kindness, you need to be able to hold back at one point in time. So it's giving and holding back. So the light is the giving aspect, but there needs to be some aspect of keli, of vessel, where you hold back. And this happens, and that's integral to having a personality of Atzilus. And do we study the world of Atzilus? That means the concept of the higher oneness, b'chol prate esespheres, in all the parts. In other words, not holistically, of the 10 spheres, like the word sapphire, because these are the building blocks. The world is made out of these 10 sapphires. Because the sapphire is the idea of it's like a shining stone, which brings out a certain beauty. Ad atmos Ein Sof, and we're going to study, and we're going to do a reverse engineer each one of these 10 building blocks, 10 spirits, with the light and the vessel, until we trace them back to the essence of the unlimited light of God. We're going to do this activity. I mean, this is the ultimate humanity. This is something that a human can do. We've been given this gift that we may not even know about, that we can do these amazing things. So should we think about it in a holistic way? The light of Atzilus, be'echus tzimtzumei, how the quality of the light is held back min ha'atzmos, from the essence of God. So tzimtzum, now it's a time to explain this concept of tzimtzum. We'll learn about it again. That basically is the best metaphor. I saw it was given in the Chavis Lavavis 1,000 years ago. Is a stained glass window. So when you have light, and a light has a certain spectrum, has a rainbow has 7 colors, and there's 3 primary colors. And when you shine the light through the stained glass window, let's say it's a blue glass, so the blue glass is actually absorbing all the other lights in the clear, in the white light. In other words, red and green and yellow, it's all being absorbed, and it's only letting the blue light through. But in the stained glass, are all the lights there? All the colors are there. The whole rainbow is there in the blue glass. It's only the blue glass is being allowed out. So that's the idea of tzimtzum, of holding back. In other words, the unlimited power of God is here, except that only in our perception, only a certain thing is being allowed through in order to create a storyline, in order to create a creation, in order that there could be a story of creation. So, and that Simpson has all these stages. You have this unlimited light, and we hold back. First, we have to create the building blocks. So that's a tzimtzum in order to create each specific building block. In other words, the light is all there, but it's being held back from our perception in order for these building blocks to become apparent from the atmos. Atmos is the it's like the Flintstone. It's the core, the oneness. It is the oneness behind all of creation. And when we're going to analyze it in a holistic way, how each little creation of each little building block, whether it's the building block of kindness, or the emotion of kindness, how it's so far, and there's such a contrast between it and the atmos and the essence, which could do anything else. Atmos could do has a potential to do anything else. So there's a real big contrast between this specific emotion of kindness or strictness or whatever it is. Hamatel. The atmos means the essence. Etzem means like bone. The core bone, Maitzil, the one that creates or that reveals the personality. There's the person behind the personality. And when you're learning the higher oneness, one of the main subjects which you want to investigate holistically is how he and the light are all one. How they don't add to his oneness. He chooses to make apparent any one of these emotions, but everything's still there. So he's still one with them. So even when we have this holistic attitude, there may be many parts and specifics. But we're going to use various metaphor which exist in our physical world. It's like a shura. We're going to use the metaphor of a fire in a Flintstone. If you make campfires, you get used to sometimes overnight the campfire goes out and but the coals are still warm, and all you need to do is put some dry leaves on top of the on the stones and blow a little bit, and the flame that is inherently inside the stone becomes revealed. So we're going to use that metaphor when you say, like this metaphor, like the fire is really there, you don't see it, it's not apparent. So the essence of God is like the hot coal, and then the flame that becomes revealed when you blow on it, that's like the specific emotion, specific sphera from Atilus. Shiniska b'sefer Yitzira, and this metaphor of a fire inside a stone is mentioned in Sefer Yetzirah, which is a book of creation written by the first forefather, Abraham. So he writes over there in a short form how creation comes about. Another holistic way of investigating this whole concept is Gilei HaHelam. The Koichas HaNefesh, Ma'atzvus HaNefesh, is from the metaphor. It's a little more refined. It's a little more like it's in the realm of psychology. So basically, there's two types of metaphors. There's the metaphors where it's something you can make it like a science experiment in nature, or it can be like it's more arts. It's more like psychology arts. How the koichas hanefesh, matzvus hanefesh, how the powers of a soul come from the essence of the soul. How come I'm able to do this or able to do that, and I have this ability and that ability? Derech klal, and we're going to look at it in a holistic manner. So the same way, because we come from God, so what we have really comes from God. So if we understand ourselves, we can understand a little bit about how the whole entire world works, because we're a little world of our own. So when we have certain abilities of art and music and expression, so where do they come from? So there's my essence, and I'm able just to make this output. And of course, that little piece of art that I create, you can't compare that to me, because I can make, I have potential to make many different forms of art. And not only that, I could have decided to be a surgeon, so I could have expressed myself in a totally different way. So I can understand this, investigate this in a holistic way, like it's known, that after the Iyun, which means after the deep learning, after looking into it, we'll actually be able to get the depth of this holistic study of the higher oneness or the lower oneness. And it's all understanding how God fills the world, which is called Yichudei Tata. One second. Okay, so basically, the lower oneness, it's going to be physical things from this world, and the higher oneness is going to be the personality of God. So this koiches and nefesh. When we say koiches and nefesh, the power of the soul, there's two things. There's emotions, but over here, what he means, it means the ability to see, hear, smell, touch, things that have to do with dealing with the outside world, and that's why that the ability to make up, to say words. So it's not an emotion. An emotion is something internal, which that it will be the higher oneness. But when it comes to creating something, that will be like the lower oneness. Now, we just did a surface investigation, but we're left with the question. We're going to stop over here. We're left with the question: should we go holistic or should we go into the specifics? And we're gonna investigate this in the next lesson, because there is a recipe. There is a specific recipe, because holistic learning, even if it has a lot of parts, or specific learning, has a different effect on the soul. And that's why we need to create a recipe that works for us. And we're going to discuss this in the next lesson. So we'll leave it there for now, and maybe we can say something. Any questions?
I don't see any questions right now, but go ahead. You want to say something about the parsha?
So it's in this week's Pirkei Avos. There's a minhag. There's a custom that after the afternoon prayer on Shabbos, in these weeks, we read one chapter of the ethics of the fathers every week. There's 6 chapters altogether. And this week's chapter, we're going to say a person needs to look at 3 things, and they don't come to an avera. And the Rebbe explains that 2 things are not good enough. Specifically, a person
translate that coming to an avera means not coming to transgress God's will.
Not coming to transgress God's will. So there's a benefit. It's not only, see, we don't want to come to the point where a person has a temptation and they need to fight. That's not a good situation. When a person has a temptation and they need to fight the temptation, that's a difficult situation. They need help from the outside. They need to do a lot of things. We don't want to even come to that situation where a person will have a temptation. How is it possible to avoid the temptation in the first place? Lidei avera means even to come to the hands of transgression. the hands of sin. Or so two things. To thinking about two things is not enough. What are the two things? Two things is that there's God and there's me. There's me, what I want, and person needs to remember that they have different parts. They have a divine part which wants to be connected with God, and then they have the essence which wants to fulfill the vision of God, because the essence is connected directly with God. So he wants to fulfill, not only just be connected with God, but actually fulfill God's vision. And then there's my animal soul, which just hopefully wants to perpetuate its own existence. And then there's the evil inclination, which is that little voice which drives a person to destruction, the opposite of what the divine soul wants. Whatever it is, whatever the divine soul wants, it wants the opposite. And then there's the good inclination, which is that little voice which says, which you're conscious, which is your conscious, which tries to remind you in your conscious mind, to remind you what your divine soul really wants. So it's a person when when you think about what you really want. So there's which part of me, and you really want every that everybody, all the different parts of a person has, that it should be all be on the same page. So, and even ultimately, even the evil inclination wants that you shouldn't listen to it. You do the exact opposite of it. It really wants you to overcome it in order that you bring out your humanity and your divinity when you don't listen to it. So, but to come into a dialogue with the evil inclination, that's very bad. That's already really late. That's already a temptation. That's not a good situation you want to be. That's not a good strategic, not good tactically. Strategically, you want to be in a situation where you don't even go into a dialogue with the evil inclination. You don't even want to go there. You prefer to convince your evil inclination that I want to do something appropriately divine, and deep down, the evil inclination prefers you to do that also. So it'll be very happy if you can convince it to do something for the divine. So how do you not come to that situation? So it's not enough to know that there's what God wants and there's you, but there's a third thing, three things. There's a world. And your soul, your divine soul, before it came into this world, was perfect. It didn't need to come into the animalistic soul. However, you came to the soul, you have a mission. The mission is to change the world, to make a difference, to make an impact on the world, to make this world better, to make the world around you better. So when a person thinks about there's God and there's me, and I have a mission, there's a world, and I have to do something meaningful in this world, so then a person is too busy. The person is too busy trying to make that meaningful impact, so they don't even come to the situation where they have time to have a temptation. And then the whole problem is strategically avoided. So look at three things, and you will not come to the hands of sinning. And this is connected with this week's parsha. Achrei Meis Kadeshim. What's Kadeshim? Being holy. How do you be holy? Well, be busy. Keep yourself busy, and you're going to be holy. And that is a lesson from this week's ethics of the fathers, together with the name of the parsha. So everybody have a good Shabbos.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Chirik. Your big Shakeach and a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.